Oh, so that's how you make toast. Yeah, I definitely used way too much horse blood then. Yikes. Oh boy. What are you doing here? You're aware there are no more new releases, right? At least none that are interesting enough for a full-blown album review. And especially not anything that would alter my end of the year list or anything like that. Oh my god. It's that time, isn't it? It's that time, isn't it? Oh my god! What day is it? What day is it? Check the fucking calendar. What day? Best albums. Oh my goodness! It's time to talk about the best metal albums of 2022! Let's go! And let's do so suited up. Oh shit! Oh my goodness! Look at this! Look at that! Doing the top 10 metal albums of the year video with some goddamn fucking style. With some class. Suit it up! Are you ready? You fucking better be. Cheers, metalheads of the internet! Welcome to the Metal Meltdown's Top 10 Best Metal Albums of 2022. The time has finally come for us to talk about the best of metal music in this wonderful, glorious year. Cheers, ladies and gentlemen. Let's not waste any goddamn time today. Let's get right to it. Here they are. Booyah. Actually, first I'm gonna put this away. It made for a good prop, but now it's time to put it away. Thank you, Maddie Matheson. This is the closest I'll ever get to having you on the channel. Maybe we'll change that one day, but for now, that's the closest we'll get. Anyways, Booyah! Top 10 Best Metal Albums. Hell yes! Alright, so a couple little rules before we go any further. First off, I will not be talking about any album that has not been reviewed in some capacity on the Metal Meltdown. Every album that we're talking about in this video has been featured on this channel, be it through a full album review or perhaps in a segment of an Albums I Missed video. Also, while this is a top 10 list, I feel I need to clarify, we're not really ranking any of these albums. I am, as per the norm, going to talk about each of them in order of release. Obviously talking about albums that came out in January or February 1st, and albums that came out later in the year, like, say, November at the very end, and I will simply tell you what my album of the year is when we arrive to it. And last but not least, a reminder, I am not God, my word is not law. Music is objective. I am not pretending that anything I'm about to say is a goddamn fact. These are all opinions. If your list looks different from mine, good. Celebrate that. Let's talk about lots of really cool, great music instead of whining because my list looks different from yours, or I left out this band or that band or whatever, man. We're here to talk about cool, fun music, so let's do that. Let's keep the vibes good and cool and fun and good and cool and fun and cool and stuff. There were a lot of badass albums released this year, to be blunt, ladies and gentlemen, so much so that this was a genuinely difficult list to assemble, to finalize, and as such we have quite a few honorable mentions, albums that I thoroughly enjoyed but just didn't make the final cut, not because they weren't good enough, but because other albums were better. But they're still great, and you should definitely still check them out if you have not already. The first of these honorable mentions is Goddess from Slugette. Badass, unorthodox, unpredictable, raw, nasty, blackened heavy metal. Definitely check that out. My second honorable mention is It's Time to Rise from the Grave from Undeaf, as far as old school, meat and potatoes death metal worship is concerned. None serve it quite as hot or as spicy as Undeaf. My third honorable mention is Phototroph from Moontooth, bold, evocative, soulful, surprisingly catchy, modern progressive metal in the vein of modern-day Mastodon and Baroness. My fourth honorable mention is Jubian from Ripped to Shreds, a satisfying smorgasbord of classic death metal, melodic death metal. It's urgent, it's angry, it's hella brutal, it's all over the place. I love it. This one actually almost made it into the top 10. It came dangerously fucking close. If this were a top 11, maybe it would have stood a chance. And my fifth and final honorable mention is 2 from Dead Cross, manic, crazed, hardcore, and crossover thrash, featuring members of Faith No More and Slayer. What the hell? Without question, one of the most chaotic, politically urgent, and poignant records of the year. It's closer to being a straight-up punk album than it is a straight-up metal album, but fuck it, I don't care, my list, my rules, fuck you. Also, I want to give a special shout-out and an award, if you will, to Worm for releasing the best EP of 2022 with Blue Nothing. I never thought The Leftovers to another studio album would sound and taste so delicious, but then again, Worm, they're master chefs. They may as well be Gordon Ramsay or Wolfgang Puck as far as the realms of death, doom, and modern extreme metal are concerned. And now getting into the actual top 10, let's start with Erebus from Venom Prison, released February 4th via Century Media Records. Venom Prison have been one of the most forward-thinking and urgent and provocative and powerful death metal bands of their modern era, not just sonically but lyrically and conceptually as well, and Erebus is no exception whatsoever. The music is tighter, heavier, more brutal, more unpredictable. There are clean vocals and all kinds of weird, complex arrangements, elements brought in from brutal death metal, from melodic death metal, from classic death metal, from deathcore. Some of the band's most simultaneously vicious and ambitious material can be found on this album as a result. Take, for instance, Pain of Oisice, which might be one of the best songs of this whole entire year, but also Golden Apple of Hesperides, Gorgon Sisters, Technologies of Death. Lyrically and conceptually, the album deals with isolation, loneliness, mass incarceration, the consequences of corrupt criminal justice. As such, it often feels very dark and cathartic and important. It's a very cathartic album. It's a very, like, pissed off and angry kind of album, even by the standards of Venom Prison, who are just kind of consistently pissed off about everything around them. For the record, everyone in this band sounds amazing, but I want to single out Larissa Stupar especially because she gives hands down one of the best vocal performances I've heard on any record this year, and frankly on any death metal record in recent memory. Far more than just your usual kind of Cookie Monster shouts and screams and gutturals, you know? She goes all the fuck out. It's just an incredible album, in my opinion. One of the best of the year, hence why it's on this list. Let's celebrate with some more wine. Did I drink all the wine already? Holy fuck, I might have a drinking problem. What else is new, am I right? Next up, we have Synchro Anarchy from Voivod, released February 11th via Century Media Records. This one should not be especially shocking or surprising or strange or bizarre, because I love me some Voivod. I love Voivod. I talk about them all the time on this channel. I actually talked about them pretty recently in a video we did last week on my birthday about my favorite metal bands of all time. Voivod happens to be one of my favorite metal bands of all time. And the reason for that is because of their totally unique, one-of-a-kind fusion of, like, thrash metal, progressive metal, avant-garde, and, like, sci-fi literature and lyricism. Like, these guys are totally just out of the fucking box. They're totally fucking weird. They embrace it with every single album. This past decade, especially from Target Earth onwards, they've just gotten better and better, weirder and weirder, tighter and tighter, with Synchro Anarchy standing as possibly one of their best albums, not just of this year, not just in a while, but, like, in general. Like, this is one of the best albums Voivod has ever put out. I'm not joking, I really would put this up there with classics like Killing Technology, Nothing Face, Dimension Hatros. It's just that tight. It's that weird. Lots of weird, janky, angular guitar patterns and chords and tones and arrangements with Snake's, like, thunderous, like, slithering voice. It's unpredictable. It throws you for a loop. It's almost psychedelic in how bizarre it is through tracks like Paranormalium, Mind Clock, Planet Eaters. It lives and thrives within a futuristic sonic dystopia, a wasteland of cybernetic hell and mayhem and apocalypse. And it is so well constructed. The production makes you feel like you're in the middle of all of this. Like you're watching Voivod put on a really high quality show, except instead of being like in a theater or a concert hall or a club, you're in your living room, perhaps drinking way too much wine and wearing a suit in my particular circumstance. Am I biased? Maybe. I do love me some Voivod, as I've mentioned many a time before. We even interviewed Snake earlier this year. But, you know what? I don't care. Because, like, Voivod rule. And Synchro Anarchy is everything Voivod does so well. But, like, even better. At its best in a long time. Next up, we have Ecstasies of Never-Ending Night, the sophomore studio album from Philadelphia's Devil Master. I never thought a band so evil, so spooky could be coming from the city of brotherly love, but here we are. I just really like everything about Devil Master and their sound and their approach to writing and constructing and producing music. Like, it's kind of this smorgasbordian assault of first wave and second wave black metal and like punk and D-beat and crossover with like a little bit of like psychedelia and acid rock thrown into the mix. Like, it's really weird and out of this world and spacey and shadowy and spooky. And like all of this is recorded on raw analog tape, which just gives everything like this really natural, organic, real kind of vibe and feeling. It's in your face, it's aggressive, it has genuine atmosphere. The songs are really catchy, really punchy, really memorable. And it's also at the same time very tongue-in-cheek, very self-aware in like an almost comic booky kind of way. I mean, you have a lot of like over-the-top kind of lyrics and like, you know, the band members will name themselves shit like a vampire queen of the dead nighter or some shit. Like, these guys know what they're doing, all right? They're not as serious or, in some cases, as pretentious as your typical kind of black metal band that's just like, yeah, we're all evil and we're all brutal and we're true cult, you know? Like, the kind of shit I guess Music of Destruction would probably jack off to in the dead of night. These guys know who they are, they know what they're doing, and they're taking it seriously, but not too seriously. Like, this is black metal, but it's fucking fun. I mean, how can you not have fun when you have all these, like, shredding surf rock guitar licks and all these weird psychedelic soundscapes and these kind of hardcore beatdowns mixed in with the kind of atmosphere that, again, we expect of classic black metal from first wave and second wave black metal bands. I issue a challenge here now. Explain to me how that isn't fun. Explain to me how tracks like Enamored in the Throes of Death and The Vigor of Evil are not fun. I dare you. I dare you, dude. Devil Master have definitely earned their name. They are masters of their fucking craft, and this album rules. It rocks hard. Next up, we have Disharmonium, Undreamable Abysses, from Blut Usnard, which I guess could be considered the yin to Devil Master's yang, because this is not fun. I mean, I guess it is, in a weird way, because I'm talking about it and I enjoyed it, but it's not fun. Like, I'll play Devil Master at a party, you know? Like, if I have a bunch of friends over, and we'll drink, and we'll shoot the shit, we'll watch a stupid movie, play some Gears of War. We won't do that with anything Blut Usnard does, frankly, but especially not this album. This album is a Cthulian H.P. Lovecraft-esque nightmare of epic and insane proportions. A bitter cocktail of misery, pain, horror, everything that makes your skin crawl. This is music meant to give you nightmares. It is not, as I put it before, fun. And yet, I still love it. I mean, everything is just expertly crafted and produced and arranged. It's hard to point out any singular moment, honestly, because everything flows with this unique pattern, almost like what I would expect of like this really ambitious kind of horror film. You have choirs of ominous, angelic / hellish chanted vocals. You have, you know, these like acidic, spewing gutturals and screeches contrasted with dizzying kind of avant-garde black metal guitar patterns and arrangements, battering riffs, pummeling percussion. I feel like I'm constantly being sucked into a vortex every time I listen to this album. I am trapped in the dark dimension, and unlike Doctor Strange, I'm not a fucking superhero, so I'm just getting fucked left and right by Dormammu and whatever other hellish, nightmarish demons he can conjure. Although I guess I could use the Infinity Gauntlet if I really needed to. I guess I could. It's right there, after all. I mean, you can't see it, but it is right there. Yeah, let's have that just in case. There we go. There we go. All right. I'm now prepared to deal with whatever lies in the hellish landscapes of this new Blood Snort album. I'm ready. Come on. Let's go, Blood Snort. Let's fucking go. I originally gave it a 4.5 out of 5. I would honestly give it a 5 out of 5 now. Like this made my skin crawl. This every hair on the back of my neck stands up when this thing fucking plays. It's horrifying. It's beautiful and majestic, but Jesus Christ, is it horrifying also at the same time. Oh, it's occurring to me I completely abandoned the format I was doing before. Ecstasies of Neverending Night came out April 29th via Relapse Records, and Disharmonium Undreamable Abysses came out May 20th via Debemer Morty Productions. So, boom, there you go. You're welcome. I just get too excited talking about these albums. It's not the wine. I'm just too excited. The wine doesn't help, though. Next up, we have a self-titled album from Artificial Brain released June 3rd via Profound Lore Records. These guys have been consistently responsible for some of the most cutting-edge and brutal technical and avant-garde death metal of the 2010s. This album wraps up kind of a trilogy of albums, if you will, starting with their debut, Labyrinth Constellation. It is their final album, with Afterbirth's Will Smith on lead vocals. No, it's not the same Will Smith from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Hancock. It's not the same Will Smith who punched a motherfucker out earlier this year for talking shit at the Oscars. It's Will Smith from Afterbirth, hence why I said Will Smith from Afterbirth. I imagine that they have plans for a new singer. I imagine they would want to eventually go on tour to promote this album. I don't know. What I do know is that if this album is the end, at least for this era of Artificial Brain, then these guys went out on a high note. Everything that defined the previous two albums remains intact. It's weird, it's brutal, it's insane, it's puzzling, it's dizzying, it gives you a headache, but in the best way possible. At the same time, though, I do feel like it's a more expansive record. Like, it's bigger, it's bolder, it has horns and trumpets, it's a more progressive and epic album, especially in its final moments on the last words of The Wobbling Sun. It almost approaches a kind of grandiosity I would expect from Imperial Triumphant, but I guess filtered maybe through, like, brutal death metal. It's disgusting, it's gnarly, it's so meticulously crafted and arranged. Every time I hear this, I can practically see the Artificial Brain guys. I mean, sitting around goofing off, eating pizza, drinking beer, probably, but also, like, really thinking about where everything should go and how everything should sound and what kind of emotions and feelings should each thing conjure up within the listener. There were many people arguing at the time of this album's release that it was, by the standards of Artificial Brain, maybe a little derivative, maybe a little formulaic, and I guess you're not wrong, because I guess there's nothing, like, mind-blowingly different happening here. But I don't know, man. In general, there are still few bands that sound like Artificial Brain, and in a lot of ways, this does expand upon a lot of what we already know and love about Artificial Brain. So what if it's pretty similar to what Artificial Brain have done before? You want to know what Artificial Brain did before? They served me a fucking 16-ounce fucking Kansas ribeye with lobster tail and foie gras and shit. I don't see a lot of other death metal bands doing that. Artificial Brain did. They are master chefs. They're brilliant. They seasoned everything to perfection. They thought about what every little piece of meat should be doing to me, how I should feel, and I feel it, and I love it. I salute you, Artificial Brain. Once again, I've no idea what the future holds for you, but I know that I'm hella pumped to hear it. Next up, we have False Light from White Ward, released June 17th via Debemer Morty Productions. This Ukrainian post-metal, black metal fusion band has obviously had it rough as of late, due to being Ukrainian and due to Russia being really shitty, more specifically Vladimir Putin, but we're not going to get into that. White Ward have persevered through pain, through hell, through agony, through war, nonetheless to release what is, without question, their most ambitious and powerful record to date. What I love about this album is that it can be really minimalistic, almost stripped down, while also still being really impactful and epic and important. Like you can have this really minimalistic production and these very minimalistic kind of black metal riffs and patterns and such, but you can also have trumpets and pianos and these very lush guitar chords and arrangements, and a lot of like emotionally charged lyrics and some dreary kind of cleans that almost bring in a bit of a Western vibe. It's an album that marinates in its own doom, in its own misery, in its own anguished heart and soul. And it's so tight and so brutal and so impressive. The opening track, Leviathan, it just kind of wows me as it goes through all of these different movements and phases without going into really confusing or overwhelming territory. Same with Salt Paradise, which is where some of that Western kind of vibes come in. It almost kind of feels like something that might have been left off of a Wayfarer record. Phoenix, Downfall, the title track, it all just makes for a really immersive listen. Like, I'm with White Ward every step of the way as they navigate the modern hellscape that unfortunately they have to navigate. The sheer existence of this album and White Ward continuing to promote it and release this in a normal fashion proves that there really is light at the end of the tunnel. There really is hope when there doesn't seem to be hope. I commend White Ward for persevering, for getting through it all, for doing the best they can, and for trying to keep their chins up. I wish them nothing but the best. I hope that they're safe. I hope that they're happy. I hope that they're comfortable. This is one of the best albums of the year. And, I don't want anyone to think that this is politically motivated because of how I'm talking. Even if what was happening in Ukraine wasn't happening in Ukraine, this would still be one of the best albums of the year because it's just that fucking well made. Oh my, it sure is hot in here. I wonder what will end up being the Metal Meltdown's #1 album of 2022. I wonder if there's a clue anywhere on this screen right now. I wonder. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We have arrived to my #1 album of 2022. It is The Spirit of Ecstasy from Imperial Triumphant, released July 22nd via Century Media Records. It is a masterpiece. It is perfect. It is somehow bigger, weirder, crazier, more insane, more expressive than 2020's Alphaville, which is saying a lot because that was one hell of an album. So that should immediately tell you how much of a one hell of an album this is as well. Holy shit. Dizzying, insane, blackened death metal, avant-garde, jazz metal fusion nonsense for days here, folks. It's battering, it's pummeling, it's brutal, it's dystopian, apocalyptic in size and scale. Building on the oppressive momentum of Alphaville, dealing with greed, capitalism, insanity, ego, in a way that pairs unsurprisingly appropriately with black metal, death metal, avant-garde, prog, jazz and jazz fusion, contemporary R&B and orchestral music. I mean, it's all over the fucking place, folks. Horns and trumpets and guitars and drums working in a weird kind of fashion. Like, it's got a weird, chaotic, I don't even know what the word is. Symmetry, maybe? I guess that's the word I'm looking for? I don't really know. It's insane. That's what matters. But it's insane in all the best ways, and in my opinion, still without being really overwhelming. And that's even despite all the talent on this thing. I mean, you've got Drew Spruance from Mr. Bungle returning, and you've got Colin Marston producing the record, who's worked with everyone from Gorguts to Panopticon. He's got his own band, Kralis. You've also got Alex Skolnick on guitar, a slew of like classic jazz and blues musicians across the board contributing trumpet and saxophone and trombone and all kinds of other stuff. Snake from Voivod makes an appearance on this record as well, which means he's very lucky to be the only person featured twice, I guess, in a top 10 best metal albums video here on this channel. Kenny G even makes an appearance on this album, specifically on In the Pleasure of Their Company, a maddening display and fusion of jazz and metal and art rock and prog. I mean, it's all over the place in the best ways possible, overflowing with insanity and creativity and passion. Every song is just so densely packed with so much shit, lyrically and musically. I could probably have made an entire video dissecting each and every one goddamn song. Maximalist Scream, Chump Change, Metro Vertigo, Death on a Highway, Mercurius Golded, Bezumnaya, the list goes on and on. Instead, I will direct you to my album review if you want more detail, because we have other albums to talk about. All you really need to know, this is my #1 album of 2022, and if I had more wine, I would happily be sharing a drink with Imperial Triumphant right now for their accomplishment. Congratulations, I love you. We're going to have you on the channel real fucking soon to talk about this masterpiece of a record, obviously with your permission. I'll make sure that there's wine for that occasion as well, since we're on the topic. Alright, I stopped for a moment to get myself some vodka. I'm in a celebratory mood. I don't have any more wine. A little vodka will do it. Cheers, Imperial Triumphant. Okay. Alright. My insides are burning. They're burning. All right, let's do it. Let's go. Next up, we have Nether Heaven from Revocation, released September 9th via Metal Blade Records. I've consistently enjoyed a lot of what Revocation has done in general. Their 2013 self-titled album is, in my opinion, one of the best thrash death records of the 2010s, and I've thoroughly enjoyed subsequent albums such as Deathless, Great Is Our Sin, The Outer Ones. This one brings everything that Revocation has done so well: the technicality, the precision, the brutality, the fusion of thrash and death, and of course the guitar wizardry of David Davidson back, and it also dives into literal and figurative levels of hell, dragging you kicking and screaming with it. Literally, in the sense that the album is literally dragging you through hell. Like, it is heavily inspired by Dante's The Divine Comedy and the concept of the 7 levels of hell. In fact, the album even goes as far as to sink you further into hell through all 7 tracks, ergo all through all 7 layers, levels, whatever. But also figurative in the sense that it deals with events that are current and that are hellish, shall we say. Environmental and social and economic and political crises. The January 6th insurrection. Greed, hatred, division, war. The result is an album that feels really urgent and powerful and spiritual for a lot of different reasons and in a lot of different ways. It's not at all unfair to say that this is Revocation's most important album to date. And despite being so important, it never loses track of the fact that, you know, Revocation know that the average person are coming into this, people who want Revocation, they just want Revocation. And Revocation do what Revocation do, and they do it to the best of their ability. Sizzling guitar pyrotechnics everywhere, brutal fusions of death metal, thrash metal, leaning further into death metal at this point in their career, but nonetheless. David Davidson is a beast on this thing, lyrically, vocally, his guitar work as well. He's been one of my favorite guitar players in general for a long time, and I mean, this album does nothing to change my mind about that. The dude is a goddamn pro, one of the best of the best. Nihilistic Violence, Diabolical Majesty, Galleries of Morbid Artistry, The Ninth Chasm, all fantastic stuff. The closing track, though, Re-Crucified, stands out as a favorite just for being like this carnivorous, bloodthirsty death thrash metal rager featuring George Fisher, aka Corpse Grinder, and Trevor Strnad on vocals. Rest in peace, Trevor. I love you. The entire album is dedicated to Trevor, for the record, but there's something especially about his appearance here alongside David, alongside George, that just feels really special and cool. Like, you can just hear so much love and passion in his voice. You know, he just kind of commands your attention when he shows up. What more can I say? It's Revocation doing what they do best, doing it with the utmost passion, sincerity, doing it with a little bit more intelligence than I would normally expect. Not to suggest that anything they've done before is dumb, but like, they've really drawn inspiration from a lot of the experiences that Revocation have had in the past couple of years, from their, from David's experience growing up Catholic, from everything he's seen online and dealt with through the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, for these past few years of political strife, and that's really admirable. Like, I mean, the dude is just like balls to the walls honest and just puts his heart out there on the fucking line, and I respect the goddamn fuck out of that. It's an incredible record. Check it out. Next up, we have Threshold from Cloudrat, released October 9th via Artifact Records. Many people hailing Hiss from Wormrot as the best grindcore record of the year, and I can understand why, because it was a great record. I believe we gave it either a 4 or a 4.5 out of 5 here on this channel. But respectfully, with all due respect, I believe the best grindcore album is Threshold from Cloudrat. I've consistently loved a lot of what Cloudrat has done. I love their very raw, intimate, nihilistic, cavernous approach to grindcore. Their music is urgent, heartfelt, passionate, devastating sonically and emotionally as well. There are a lot of songs on here that are rabid, carnivorous, but still quite intricate. There are some interviews where Cloudrat have cited influence from like prog metal and prog rock, like bands like Rush and Queensryche, and I can kind of see that in a weird backwards sort of way. I think a better comparison though would be like classic Napalm Death and Converge, but like filtered through the modern era, filtered through a lot of issues that we can address and relate to today. Sludgy passages, blackened sprawls on top of the typical grindcore intensity. The lyrics are incredibly brutal, devastatingly so, dealing with sexual assault, rape, mental anguish, isolation and confusion and depression, injustices and discrimination as well, without being like especially preachy. Like, everything comes from a very, very personal point of view, and as such the album feels very personal. Top that off with a very intimate production, which is just so raw and so nasty, and it makes for something that's just very immediate, and it feels like Cloudrat are in my living room right now every time I jam this thing. Like, they went out of their way to make this feel like a live album. Live in the sense that you're living it live, and also live in the sense that it's happening in front of you. Like, you're watching Cloudrat perform this in its entirety. Devastating vocals, devastating percussion, devastating guitar work, devastating lyrics, devastating everything. I love this fucking thing. Cloudrat have released a slew of fantastic records, EPs, splits, and such over the years, but this might somehow be their best yet. It's definitely, at the very least, the best grindcore record of 2022. Again, no disrespect to Hiss from Wormrot. Solid runner-up. Nothing wrong with Silver. And finally, let's wrap things up with Song of Salvation, the sophomore album from Dream Unending, released November 11th via 20 Buck Spin. We talked about this album pretty recently on the Metal Meltdown, so I'm not going to go into an absurd level of detail. I am just going to reiterate that I feel like this album is taking Death Doom into brand new territory, into more emotional and into more progressive territory, while rooted within the classic sounds and styles of Anathema, Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride, and I guess in terms of some of the guitar tones and stuff, maybe even Typo Negative. It's also a much more optimistic and hopeful record and in tone, while also being very dreamy in sound and execution. Like, it has a lot of fantastical arrangements, lush orchestration, and like there's trumpet and these very melancholic, clean vocals as well. Dream Unending have gone as far as to call themselves Dream Doom as opposed to Death Doom, and honestly, I feel like that's a pretty accurate description. Like, it may sound and feel like Death Doom in the vein of all the bands we've talked about, maybe not so much Typo Negative because they're not really Death Doom, but fuck it, you get the idea. But it evokes something much more beautiful, much more pleasant, much more heartfelt. It is Death Doom that very much looks to the future instead of wallowing in the past. Instead of wallowing on its misery, it expands and tries to learn from its misery. In my initial review, I said that this album feels like the yin to the rest of Death Doom's yang, and that's something that has been repeated by some people watching the Metal Meltdown. What up, Easy Bake Coven? I definitely didn't steal that from you. And I stand by that still to this day. The production, too, is incredible on this thing. I mean, the guitar tone, the vocals, the overall vibe and aura of this thing. If I didn't know any better, a part of me might have assumed that this was like a classic 90s Death Doom record. It's just refreshing in general too, because so much of Death Doom nowadays is populated with Autopsy and Incantation clones, which, understandable, those bands are great. But it's nice to see a band that can look to other sources of inspiration and kind of take that into brand new territory. Like, as much as this is heavily inspired by Anathema, My Dying Bride, Paradise Lost, it never feels derivative of those bands. It never feels like a carbon copy. It never feels like they're taking anything from those bands and from those early records. It's just remarkable. With Song of Salvation, Dream Unending, have me living in a dream that I truly hope never ends. I truly hope it goes on forever, because it is beautiful. And voila, I think that's it. I think that'll do it for us here at the Metal Meltdown. Those were the Metal Meltdown's top 10 best metal albums of 2022. How do you feel? I'm feeling good. I'm feeling a little bit more down to earth right now. Still a little silly, still a little goofy. Once again, probably shouldn't have started off drinking all that wine, but I'm in a celebratory mood because it's been an amazing fucking year filled with amazing fucking music. Stay tuned for the Metal Meltdown's top 10 best non-metal albums of the year, because believe it or not, the Metal Meltdown does not exclusively listen to metal. Stay tuned for Anna and Chompy's top 10 best metal albums of the year, and of course, our worst albums of the year list. In fact, I will tell you right now, this year it's not a top 5 list. It will also be a top 10 list, because goddamn, there was a lot of good shit, but there was also a lot of shit. Thank you for tuning in. Tell me what your favorite albums of the year were. Tell me how you feel about my list, if you feel like I'm a poser or if I'm an elitist, whatever makes you feel better. Press this button to subscribe. Press this right here. Look, there's more videos. Look at that. That's pretty cool. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.